Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending our Thursday, August 20th, 2020, regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen's meeting. I call the meeting to order and ask that we please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next section of the meeting is reserved for public comment. So those people who wish to speak to the Board of Selectmen, this would be the chance. Those people in attendance, we wish that you keep the comments limited to 3 minutes or less, and please state your name and address for the record. Donna, I think we have at least one person.
Yes, this is
comment.
Yes, good evening. My name is Carol Connolly, and I live at 15 Wildflower Drive. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
First, I really want to thank the Board of Selectmen for everything you do and just really give a shout out to say thank you so much for helping us during COVID. A real special shout out to our town manager who's been fabulous through our storm. He has great leadership and great empathy for parents, and we just appreciate you, Andy, and I wanted to go on the record and publicly thank you. I want to take a minute to brief the Board of Selectmen about parents being very upset and angry, and I just want to give you a quick background. The Hebron Board of Education failed to follow the recommendation of our new superintendent, who proposed a part-time hybrid model for about 3 weeks and then to move into a full-time model. So again, phase 1 is part-time, just 3 weeks, and phase 2 was to go full-time. Our Board of Ed chair and the majority failed us. I'm very disappointed. I feel like shame on them for forcing the superintendent to go to a 1-week hybrid model. That means that the superintendent has 1 week to implement all these safety guidelines. I would like to say to the superintendent, you did a fabulous job presenting to us. You gave us all the data. The data was based on the principals, the administrators, the teachers, and the staff. They all said, give us 3 weeks. We'll do it once. We'll do it right. We all want to go full time. The parents are very upset because now the Board of Ed said we want it done in 1 week. We saw administrators and teachers with stress on their face. The parents formed a group called Parents United. We have over 60 members. Actually, it's called Moms United. And we think the state guidance is very clear. It says the superintendent has the authority to make the decision. So we beg the superintendent, we know you're new, we know the Board of Ed renews your contract and does your evaluation, but please have the courage, superintendent, to go ahead and do the 3 weeks. Again, these safety measures, we have to teach our kids to wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, learn new rules. Parents have to go into the parking lot. There has to be temperature checks. This is going to be a nightmare, and it's going to put our children at risk. And I just want to say that really, I encourage the Board of Selectmen to look at the superintendent and say, why are we not going with the 3 weeks? That's what you recommended. And again, I would say to Danny Larson, you and the Board of Selectmen have always supported our children. You've always supported our parents. You've gone to our Hebron Ed Foundation. Please don't put our children at risk. And this is a high risk. And if you do, parents are going to be forced to go to court and possibly file an injunction. An injunction, we would say to the court, look, forced to go back full time after 1 week puts our children in irreparable harm. We don't want to do this. And in closing, I just want to say, one Board of Ed member did this, and I've never seen this from the Board of Selectmen ever. You've always said you're Republicans, you're Democrats, and you work together. Peter Casper is a great role model, and so is Gail when it comes to really trying to stick together. One of your Republican colleagues on the Board of Ed stood up and said, I just want to thank all the Republicans for sticking together and voting to force the superintendent to go 1 week. We don't do that in Hebron. This isn't about Republicans, Democrats, or independents. This is about our children. So I just beg you, Danny, you might not have all the facts. The superintendent sent this fabulous letter. Can you please just look into this, Danny? Because 3 short weeks is going to be what we need. Hundreds of parents are going to pull into the parking lot. Someone could get hurt. My son has to wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart. If it's part-time, he'll be in class with 10 kids as opposed to 20. So I just thank you for everything. I'm sorry if I talk too long and too fast, but please, Superintendent, you have the authority. Go back and tell the Board of Ed, give me 3 weeks. So thank you so much, and I am so grateful for all your time and consideration.
Thank you, Carol. I will say that this is, I've read over the document that was just sent out just a couple of days ago, which was my first exposure to it. And this is the Board of Ed's night to actually present to us just what the process is going to be. So I am as, in a sense, uninformed as, probably the rest of my colleagues at this time. So.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to respond to Carol.
Please.
So I'm not as uninformed because in the past couple of days, I've probably received 20 phone calls from teachers, parents who are very concerned and disturbed that the hybrid wasn't the initial and the chosen method of coming back to school. And to use kids as guinea pigs to see if this is going to work or it isn't going to work and take that risk is kind of unconscionable to a lot of people. And I'm echoing their sentiments. So what is the harm in waiting 3 weeks, even a month, to see if the system works, if kids are going to get sick, if teachers are going to get sick? Why rush into something when you have time on your side? There's no reason to rush this. And if you can articulate some reason why you would and risk the safety and well-being of others just to go back to school, I can't see any reason for that. And I haven't heard one person that I've talked to that's in favor of going back full-time initially.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak?
Yes, please.
Well, Gail Richmond, Board of Selectmen. This is an event, a pandemic that we have no experience in. We have no frame of reference. So any plans that got brought forth by anyone are being done with the guidance of their profession, consulting with others in the field, and coming up with something. I read the initial thing to come back after a few weeks, and I thought it was very thought out, and I liked it because now I've raised 3 kids. I have young grandchildren. I want my grandchildren back in school because it's vital to not just their academics, but their social and emotional growth. But they have to have their health if they're going to benefit from those other aspects. So myself, my personal feeling was, let's see what happens. I'm concerned about the entry plan in the morning, bringing the cars in. I'm really concerned about what's going to happen when parents try to pick up their youngsters. It's going to be a lot of people, and we've never done this before. Everyone's trying their best. Everyone's trying to search their way through all the varying opinions. But I think we need to be slow so that we don't have any events that we don't want to see. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I've actually been following this too. I was at the last Board of Education meeting and I've talked to a lot of the leaders, and I know there's a lot of people that are upset, and I also know there's been a lot of work that's gone into trying to come up with these plans. So I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. I'm particularly interested to hear what Dr. Baird has to say, what the principals have to say, because they are the experts, and that's what we hired them for. And so I hope, I hope we are all take this in a calm way and just listen to the experts, and listen to Chairman the chairman of the board also speak to it, and keep an open mind. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other people phoning in or? Okay,
There were
hearing no more
no other public comments noted.
Okay, hearing no other public comment, we'll move into our good to know. And Andy, do you have anything for us? Actually, Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah, I was hoping, Mr. Chairman, you could speak to that, seeing you're going to be a participant.
Yes. A lot of work has gone into this. This is the dedication for the Rosie the Riveter. This is to honor all those women who, back during World War II, literally changed their lives around, went into the factories, ended up doing a lot of the work that was always been considered, a male job. And basically, they were the backing to all the people who served overseas to keep America free and, in fact, to keep Europe free. So, these women sacrificed so much, not only for their changes of their lives, but also, sadly, many of them lost sons, husbands, in some cases daughters, because there were a lot of women who were also overseas as nurses, other support staff, and their lives were equally at risk, and sadly, some of them did not make it home. So this is happening August 23rd, Sunday at 2 p.m. It's going to be at the observation post. We do have other state dignitaries coming in to talk on this. At this point, because of the possible inclement weather, there was going to be some World War II military type vehicles there and other equipment, but hopefully they will still be able to make it. I can't speak, as I say, with the possible showers, but it'll be a great event, and it's actually to also show off our observation post, which is, from what I'm being told, it's either the last one in existence or close to the last one in existence in the United States. This was a structure that was used by, again, civilians would go up and they would literally stay there, and their quest was to hope not to find, but they were looking for military aircraft from Germany coming over to attack our factories, our cities here in the United States. So these buildings predated our radar systems. And in fact, we actually, back when this building was first dedicated, actually had a couple people who spoke who quite literally served going into the tower at day, night, winter, summer, looking for enemy aircraft. And in fact, if I remember right, she had made a comment that, and I prayed to God that I never saw one, because then the next thing was to call. And I guess from what I can read, literally they would call a number, it would go to Boston, and then from there it would go out to the military to take whatever action was deemed necessary. So it's quite a interesting structure. There's a lot of memorabilia in it, and I really urge people to show up. So thank you. I don't have an agenda in front of me.
Okay. So next would be the town manager's report, and
thank you.
I'll go through this quickly because it's only been a week. So what we are working on now is the new auditors are in for this year already. They're working to get that process started. They're working with us, and I think they visited the schools today. We'll hear from Superintendent Bard later on, but we're working with them very diligently now with the police coverage that they're trying to obtain. Also, RAM is looking for additional police coverage, so we're gonna try to get that in place the best we can. We worked had a conference call with the bonding agency, and we're getting all our ducks in a row for that. So Elaine and I were busy with that today. They're going to start paving on Burnt Hill Road hopefully next week, weather permitting. Looks like it's going to be a good week, so they're going to be busy with that. I've been meeting with the Parks and Rec Commission, and we've been drafting a new job description and a way to come up with Rich's replacement. They want to get that in place and come see you. So I got to meet again with them again tomorrow. And then I had a meeting 2 days ago down at Hemlocks. They're looking to see if they can't partner with the town of Hebron in some way or another to try to get their facilities some more use and get them some income. Right now, with what they do, they're kind of stalled. So they're trying to think outside the box, and they're going to be able to open up their facility at least at a certain percentage. If it's 50%, same thing with the pool. So once again, too bad it wasn't a couple months ago, but we're still willing to work with them to see if we can come up with something.
Good.
And that's all I had for this week's town manager's report.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, without further ado, the next item is 6A, and that's an update on the COVID-19 long-term recovery in town departments, but it's also the school entry and reopening plan. So I think there's not much change in what we're doing at Town Hall at this point in time with our reopening at the town, but I'm sure the superintendent has quite a bit to go through. So I'll just turn it over to him if that's okay.
That would be fine, please.
So good evening. Thank you for having us this evening. We really appreciate you letting us come and speak with you and putting us on the agenda. Dr. Baird and I are more than happy to discuss our reopening with you. The Board of Education did meet earlier this week. We voted in the majority to open schools full-time on September 14th. So we will be doing, we had pushed back the date, the start of school several months ago to 9/8. So we will be doing the first week as hybrid. And then we will be going full-time in person on September 14th. I believe, a lot of the, good things that are happening, and the reason I believe the board voted in the majority for this was because of all of the good, wonderful safety precautions that we're putting in place. We're following the data and guidance from the state. The governor has said that he wants the schools to reopen. And that we were charged with reopening. He's not allowing schools to go into a hybrid model, and I'm sure Dr. Baird can talk more to that than I can. He did say that you could begin opening that way, but you needed to go to full time. And so because of all the increased safety measures that Dr. Baird put in place that we're so thankful for, and we're so thankful to have him because he's been working on them for months, and in the past week has put even more in place, that I believe our kids, I don't think there's one thing that he hasn't done inside our schools to make them as safe as possible for our children. So I'll let him go through those things. He has a presentation and he can show you all the safety measures that we put in place, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Dr. Baird,
sure.
You can share that maybe.
Yeah, Donna, I sent you a handout to put up. Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to mention a couple of things that I have. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go through the entire presentation that we did with the board on Tuesday, but I wanted to give you a little bit more information before I talk through all of the safety measures. One of the biggest challenges, and and Ms. Pettit is correct. Like, we did put in place some additional safety measures after we got our final student count. Because what we found is that there was a difference between how many families were indicating in July they were sending their students back for in-school learning versus choosing to have their students continue with distance learning. So we had more students. There are going to be more students who are going to be coming back to school than what we initially saw. And if people are not aware, families can choose to either have their students stay at home and continue to do distance learning, the kind of teaching that we did back in the spring when we closed, or they can send students back to school for in-school learning. So back when we did our July survey, we found that it was approximately 57% of families were indicating that they were very likely or likely to send their students back to school, with another around 20% saying that they weren't sure. So we were anticipating around 75% of students returning to school. That was originally like how we were going about our planning. Hearing a little bit of feedback. I don't know if people want to mute, that might help with that. When we then asked families to send us their fall intentions and really lock in their decision, although families can change their mind at any time, we found that number increased pretty dramatically to anywhere between 82 and 95% across the grade levels. Of course, grade level data is important because then we're setting up classrooms. So having 95% of, for example, grade 6 come back is very different than 75% of grade 6 when you're setting up the classrooms. So that was concerning to us. We wanted to go back and do some additional planning to make up for that difference. In all my conversations with Chatham Health, there are several things you can do, several tools in your toolbox to fight against COVID. Those being that you have the use of masks. Masks are required for students and for staff, along with PPE. So there's additional personal protective equipment that students and staff would use as well. So that's one of your tools. Another tool is social distancing. Obviously, with so many students returning, that is somewhat compromised. So we need to think about how we use some of our other tools. Cohorting is another tool. Cohorting means keeping kids in smaller groups and not interacting with other students outside of that group. Health screening, meaning like the idea of temperature checks. That was something that we added after we saw how many students were coming back. Health screening also means tracking what CDC defines as close contact interactions throughout the day, so we can do our own contact tracing. And monitoring illness. So we'll be monitoring all the symptoms of any students or staff that are out. We'll be tracking that in an internal database and working with Chatham Health on what the trends we're seeing in terms of our illnesses. Cleaning. Now, we had maximized our cleaning. When we get to talking a little bit about how much does this all cost, I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then our HVAC system. So we did put in some improvements to our HVAC system back in June, and I'll talk about that. I'm happy to talk about that as well. But those are the tools in our toolbox. Well, cleaning and HVAC are completely maximized. We were already doing everything we possibly could in those areas. So that really meant we had to look at, if social distancing was a concern, how do we use some of the other tools in the tool belt? So that was when Mrs. Pettit was talking about how we went back and increased and looked at like what else we could do. That's what we're really focused on. Now, in terms of social distancing, what the American Pediatrics, their guidelines say 3 to 6 feet. Like that's how far you really want students to be. And we know that students are going to be moving around the classroom, and we're never going to be able to guarantee exactly how many feet are going to be between any students at any given time. But the Connecticut guidelines, Connecticut Department of Education's guidelines are we need to maximize that social distance to the extent we possibly can. So we certainly have done that, but we put in some additional safeguards in terms of cohorting. So that meant that we changed up our specials rotation. So students are going to be going to art, music, PE, library and media, those types of classes. Rather than having a daily rotation, we're going to a weekly rotation. All of those staff members will use enhanced PPE in form of a face shield. So that was an enhancement to our cohorting model. We moved to have all of our classes they're going to all be eating in the classroom. Previous to this, some of our classes are going to eat in the classroom. Now all of our classes are going to eat in the classroom. And then in terms of social distancing and PPE for students, mask wearing is going to be essential. That's going to be something that is going to make sure that our kids are safe. And so when we're talking about the idea of phasing in, that's where the phase in, that's one of the key pieces around the phase in. It's really getting kids acclimated to mask wearing. We also move forward with ordering desk shields for every desk. So these are plexiglass shields that would go on the desk, and they're foldable, so students can also bring them to another part of the building if they need to access a different part of the building. Every student will have their own, and we also maximize material. We maximize the extent at which we don't have students sharing the same material. So we redeployed our devices so that every student would have their own. It did not require purchasing additional devices, although we thought initially we might, but we were able to move around some of the devices in the library and the STEAM classroom and the music rooms to be able to have full sets for kindergarten and first grade. We don't always have a full set of iPads for that grade level. So we've used all of our tools in the toolbox. We can fully, and in many cases, exceed the requirements of the Connecticut Department of Ed for opening schools. So yes, it is true that I proposed and the administrative team proposed having a phased in process to full reopening. The board felt with these enhancements to the plan that a week was sufficient, but we'll be closely monitoring how well these tools are working as we move through the reopening. You see all the safety measures that we've put in place. I've hit on a lot of them. Talking through some of those other pieces of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about any of these. Some of these things we accomplished in the budget last year. The UV light disinfecting technology that we installed in the HVAC system. That was something we did at the conclusion of last year in preparations for this year. And then Donna, if you could move on to the next slide. So here's what right now we have as what these anticipated costs would be for reopening schools. You can see the bottom line there, $423,714. I know that our board chair sent a letter to the board, the chair of the Board of Selectmen and the chair of the Board of Finance. We were originally estimating that these costs would be in excess of $500,000 or approximately $500,000, I think it was at that time. You can see that we're trending down right now. This is going to fluctuate over the course of the year because some of these are dependent on our mode of operation. But you can see at the top, we start with bus monitors. So right now, our thinking is that we would have bus monitors on some of our buses to start the year, and we will assess the need for that as we go through the first month of school. But the cost of that is approximately $4,500. We have 2 part-time custodians that we are adding. The overtime would be for the work that was done over the summer to get ready to start school. We haven't hired the 2 part-time custodians yet, so we haven't had those people on our team. But we are going to have our custodians working staggered shifts over the course of the day, so they're continuously cleaning in the school and then doing the final cleaning at the end of the day. Teachers will have to exit the building earlier than they've had to before, so we can do the final cleaning. But custodians will be shifting their hours quite a bit. We hired 2 LPNs. The cost of that has trended down as we completed the hiring. We originally budgeted for health insurance. The 2 people that we hired didn't elect to take health insurance, so that accounted for a lot of the savings so far from that original $500,000 projection. We added a 2nd grade teacher and a interventionist. These were majority grant funded positions, so the local cost for the adding of those 2 certified staff members is just around $25,000. The grants that we wrote to pay for the majority of those positions, I just got word today that the second of the two grants was approved. So both grants have been approved as of this week. We heard about the other one earlier this week. Yeah, the majority of that funding is grant funded. This was the local match to get us those positions. Grade 2 we felt was really critical to lower the class size in second grade. Typically, our class size increases as students move from first to second grade, but given the school closure last year, we felt it essential to maintain the class size from first to second grade this year. And the additional interventionists will help provide really targeted assistance to students who are doing distance learning that need academic support. And that was actually it resulted in maintaining a position that was originally cut in the budget process last year. The reentry team, we have a lot of 10-month, most of our employees are 10-month employees, and we've needed many of them to be here with us this summer to plan for the reopening of school. That $12,000 really represents the cost of those people in over the summer, helping us formulate our plans. Paraprofessionals, we needed to hire additional paraprofessionals at Gilead Hill School to assist in kindergarten and in our ability to have lunch in the classrooms. We need to have sufficient staff to cover lunches throughout the day. So those paraprofessionals are here at Gilead. That's a result. I think that represents 1.5 paraprofessionals. COVID supplies. So we've budgeted at this point $100,000 in PPE, instructional supplies, cleaning supplies. We recognize that lots of families are in financial hardship right now with employment being impacted by COVID. We also needed to have instructional supplies be individual per student. We were not asking families to be sending in individual student instructional supplies, and we're not doing communal instructional supplies. So that means that there was some additional cost there. It's amazing how quickly that adds up. That $100,000 is a projection for the entire school year. I would say right now we're about $60,000, and that includes the desk shields. That includes things like mailbox file folders that we hung outside of every classroom door. So instead of teachers going to the office to pick up their mail will be delivered to their classroom. Gowns, face masks, face shields, all those kinds of items, sanitizers, touchless soap dispensers, all of those kinds of things all fit within that. Technology needs, so we have some software in terms of facilitating distance learning that many companies gave us software subscriptions for free at very significant discounts last spring. But now it's time to renew, and we've also expanded the use of some of those tools. So that's the majority of what that is, along with more sufficient cases for devices as students are transporting devices to and from home. A significant cost for us for the closure last year was the loss of pre-K tuition. Chairwoman Pettit, you may want to speak to that one, but the board set some tuition guidelines for this next school year, so that it would not be that we would lose all of our preschool tuition if we were closed. It would be a sliding proportion. But we also have less students we're allowed to have in pre-K. Currently, pre-K students are not required to wear a mask, and the Office of Early Childhood has lowered the class size to mitigate that risk of students not wearing masks. So we went from class sizes of 17 and 18, we're capped at 14 right now. So that $72,000 figure represents the loss of tuition for having a lower class size in pre-K. But that number will certainly grow if we are closed. If we were operating under hybrid learning, then we would be charging 75% of the tuition rate to maintain someone's pre-K slot. If we're fully, we would be charging 50%. Students would be receiving distance learning, so while they wouldn't be here on site potentially, although I think that may be something that we will need to look at, because we were going to have preschool still operate during the phase-in process while the virus infection rate was so low. We did feel like we could operate preschool there. They have a very extreme controlled cohort. Those students are not traveling outside of those classrooms, and we do not have very many staff who are outside of those classrooms coming into those classrooms. So it's different safety concerns with that group compared to K through 6. So that number is certainly going to fluctuate throughout the year. We can anticipate if we're at hybrid learning that we would have about a $6,500 loss per month. And if we were in full closure, about a $12,000 loss per month for preschool tuition. And all of that together adds up to $423,714 thus far. We did receive, superintendents were told that we would be getting some additional state aid. There's been, I think it was $60 million across the state that is going to be divided up amongst the districts. I was told it would be probably more than the last COVID impact aid that we were given. That was around $15,000, I believe, $12,000–15,000. So I expect it will be more than that, and that'll help contribute towards the $423,000. But at this time, I don't anticipate that the state is going to be sending us a check for $423,000. The other piece I'll just say is that I did initiate, because of these unknown expenses, we are operating on a freeze, which doesn't mean we're not ordering or buying things, but it means that the business manager and I review everything before it goes through. We're not just saying you had a budget of $20,000 for textbooks, for example, so the money is there to buy textbooks. Every purchase is going through. It's being considered in terms of how essential it is to the operation of this school year. So it's also not a foregone conclusion that we're going to be over budget by $423,000 at this time either. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Yes, a couple of things. First off, I did receive a letter or a request, if you will, Sunday. So literally just a few days ago, which is the first that, as far as I know, we've had any indication of what was even happening cost-wise. I'm not sure how the auditors will view this, but it would have been beneficial if the town manager had at least been included in some of these earlier discussions. What about the police? I heard that there is a very heavy emphasis on utilizing the actually police that we probably, I'm not even sure if we even have the numbers that are being requested on staff even at this point in time. And also I don't see that number in anything. So I was wondering how that was being discussed.
So we started planning arrival dismissal with RSRO and then also with Trooper Greenwood. And I reached out to Andy, let him know we were having those conversations. And Andy and I talked about that this week. We know that it's not necessarily possible that you're going to be able to provide as many officers as we would love to have every day for the whole school year. I think we're also going to learn a lot about how arrival and dismissal goes over the first weeks of school. And we're going to have to be assessing that. In terms of the cost, I didn't price that out because they're not Board of Education employees, so I don't know how I would cost that part out.
Andy or Mark, you want to chime in or?
I'm working with the superintendent now. He was initially working with Trooper Greenwood, who's in quarantine due to getting ready to go for a process, so we hadn't talked. So I just got updated this week. And I guess the hybrid plan is they're looking for the SRO who we've hired for the school is going to be at Gilead. And they're looking to have 2 more police officers at Hebron Elementary. Also, RAM has Mark as the SRO, and they're looking for 2 additional police officers there due to the new construction. So we're going to be pretty strapped out, run thin, but we're working on it. We're going to full cooperation, give you everything we have for a smooth opening and do the best we can. But the other concern is we also didn't budget anything for this, so I didn't know if there was a conduit or a way to try to get it through the reopening reimbursement or not. But the town didn't budget any extra funds for that. With RAM, we have a contract and an hourly rate, so they'll have to pick that up. But with the elementary schools, the town will be on the hook for that extra coverage.
And Chairman Larson, I'll just say this too. This is still fairly new to us too. So we just got the student data about 3 weeks ago. And when the numbers came back, we were more concerned about arrival and dismissal than we were previously. So it's definitely a very fluid process. Right now, there is an officer at Hebron every day, is my understanding. And with the new SRO, we knew we would have one for each school. But in the design for the arrival and dismissal, when we started working with the officers, it was really only been the last week that we've been working on this. The principal was requesting 2 officers when we started designing it. Our new SRO, Tom Regan, met with both principals today to walk the parking lots and go through the exact traffic flow. So this has all really been coming together over the last week and a half.
Now, does it have to be a police officer? I'm wondering if other entities could fill those shoes. I'm trying to grasp what the purpose of having a police officer was as compared to maybe somebody in security or something like that. And again, I'm just trying to think, because this is literally my first exposure to this request.
Andy, would you mind if I speak to that? So Dan, we've ventured into that in the past. In hiring an outside traffic firm winds up being more expensive than having the police officer. And having stood in front of Hebron Elementary and directed traffic for 8 straight years, people at times hardly respect me, let alone somebody who isn't a police officer. So it's a difficult task to be out there in the middle of the road, trying to get people to do things that they don't want to do. Everybody's in a hurry. There's a certain degree of confusion and inconsideration. So it's a tough task. And having done it before, I think it's a necessity to make the school safe and make people feel comfortable having a police officer out front. I think we need at least one. Trying to get 2 might be a little difficult, because then you're leaving me up at RAM, and I have 900 kids, and that's half coming, and that includes parents dropping off, and that includes high school kids driving to school. So having done both, they're both a necessity. It's a little more chaotic at RAM due to the factors of having teenagers driving to school and the increased numbers. And in our survey, 60% and higher said they're going to drive kids to school, that they're not going to take the bus because that's too much of a risk. So we may even have more numbers at even having the hybrid than we had with full enrollment. But Dan, it just needs to be done.
Oh, no, I did not realize that they would both be out at the street. I thought there would be maybe one up the sidewalk, or I definitely agree with you at the street. I wasn't sure how they were dividing up the labor.
Right. Well, as Dr. Barrett could say, that the paras are great, and the paras are crucial to the whole mechanism working, and they've been doing it for years too. And I'll say this as a police officer and just as a parent who had a stepkid there, they do a phenomenal job of keeping the kids safe, keeping them calm, and getting everybody in there. So on site, they have that covered. Maybe, Dr. Baird, you need one more para out at the other end, but that's your decision.
I think we're going to learn a lot over that first week, and that's one of the reasons why we were saying we needed to start with a hybrid phase in, which we'll have that for the first week, because the traffic flow, it does raise some concern. I think anybody would be concerned when you start talking about 120 cars potentially pulling into Hebron Elementary School within a 45-minute window. So we're going to have to see how well we staggered out arrival and dismissal and make adjustments. We also talked about how, with the size force that you have, we're going to have a backup plan. If somebody's out sick or something, we still got cars coming in. As an assistant principal, I directed traffic every morning and every afternoon. So, certainly we'll have a way that we can still run arrival and dismissal if we didn't have the officer one day. But I think definitely at the beginning of the school year, it's going to be critical. And then as people become familiar with the pattern, familiar with the routine, it's obviously going to be easier. But it's definitely, and we saw about the same, Mark. We have about 60% of our students are going to be coming by car as well. And the board asked a really good question, like, do we create this problem? Well, it's a catch-22 because we don't have a busing problem right now. Our busing capacity has been reduced significantly, but we've created a arrival and dismissal problem. I can't solve a busing problem, but I can potentially solve an arrival and dismissal problem. So I'd much rather have this to deal with than not having kids too close together on the bus.
Thank you.
Chairman, can I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
Dr. Baird, thank you for coming and your presentation. And thank you for, serving Hebron. I've been impressed with your service and since you've come here. So thank you. I've read your letter that you sent out today, and it raised a couple of questions for me. It's a good letter. I think it's got a lot of emotion in it. It certainly shows your how much you care about the kids. But one of the things was that you proposed a 5-week, and then you proposed a 3-week. Now we're down to 1. In your professional opinion, is this the best plan that we can have?
The best, I would say the best plan would be the one I recommended, right? Like, I think that the 3-week is what we felt like would be the right way to begin the year. I'm not going to go back on that recommendation. I think 1 week gives us time to make sure the plan is working. So I respect the board's decision on that. I do think that there was some good feedback that 5 weeks was too long, and we looked at modifying that. And so that and we added in the additional safety features, which we felt comfortable coming back with the 3-week phase in. But what I said in the letter is how I feel. Like, I respect the board's position, and we will do everything we can to make it work. And we will be making an assessment over that first week just to make sure that we can continue to operate safely.
Okay, so what was it about the 3-week plan that was preferable to a 1-week plan? I'm not an educator.
Really, we need to look at 3 things. 1, arrival and dismissal. So the team is concerned about arrival and dismissal. So we need to see how well the traffic flow is going and making sure that we're feeling that the arrival and dismissal is safe. So that's one consideration. The other is really around mask wearing. The mask wearing is essential in the fight against COVID. So we know that 3 to 6 feet is safe for kids if you're wearing a mask. So that's an important distinction. And I think everybody sort of has had that drilled in, right? That CDC says if you're closer than 6 feet, you need to be wearing a mask.
Right.
It's not feasible for us to get to more than 6 feet in a classroom. That's just not going to happen. So we can achieve 3 to 6 feet, or 3 feet is how much distance we can achieve in the classroom, setting up our student workstations. But mask wearing is going to be really critical to that. I wore a mask for 8 hours with no air conditioning to see what that felt like. And that's going to be challenging for our kids. I took a lunch break, and I meant to say this earlier, but like, kudos to the Parks and Rec department. They did a great job clearing out the nature trail here at Gilead for us to use as some outdoor learning space. So I ate my lunch, I walked the nature trail. It had just gotten finished a couple days prior to that. So, I took my 40 minutes or so without the mask on in the middle of the day. But otherwise, for 8 hours, I was wearing that mask. And that's going to be a challenge for kids to be successful at that. So we're going to have to look at how well are kids wearing masks throughout the day. We're going to have to look at the number of medical exemptions for masks and like what does that look like? That process hasn't really begun yet. We're still waiting for clear guidance from the Connecticut Department of Ed on how to work with families who have medical challenges or students with disabilities that aren't able to safely wear a mask. So, we're going to have to really look at those two things, arrival dismissal and mask wearing. And we're going to have to see how well that we're doing with that.
So, look, I think this is new for everybody, and I appreciate all the board members and the Board of Education for all the work they've done and especially to Chairman Pettit for, getting a consensus, because I think that's important. I think the community has to feel comfortable. If in the first week we find that the kids aren't using their masks, or, we actually get some kids come down with COVID or something like that, is there flexibility in the plan to go to 3 weeks or something like that?
At any time, we could have a school, we could be fully closed. If we have cases of COVID in our school, it's likely that we will be closed and assessing who needs to quarantine. So, once the school year begins, the responsibility reverts to me, and I've got to make those decisions, and that's outlined in the plan.
Okay. Well, I like your letter. I feel confident that, that you'll make good decisions, and so thank you.
And I would say, Tom, and maybe you spoke to this, Dr. Baird, in regard to traffic. So a couple things in regard to traffic, and I think you mentioned it earlier, or, we've had a lot of meetings and discussions about this, so it could have been the other night, but we are going to be doing staggered like kids coming in, so it'll be staggered, by last name. And I don't want to say how that's going to look right now, because I don't want anyone to quote us on exactly what that looks like, because I know that's a plan that's going to come out very soon. But by, breaking up last name and then having the buses come in and then like the end of the alphabet by last name. So it's not the same as it has been in the past where everyone is coming at one time. And that's going to be the same with dismissal. We're going to stagger how kids are picked up, if, and the busing. In regard to masks, I would put it out there, that I would ask the community. I'm hoping that they've already started doing this, but, to also work with kids, I think it's a community effort. We all want our kids back to school. We heard from so many parents, on both sides, but really, like a lot of parents that really want their kids back in school. It's been a long time, and I think it's a community effort. I think we all care about children. Without a doubt, I wouldn't on every board. And I just think that community effort should really work with your child to start wearing their mask now and getting used to it. My daughter's been wearing it since March. So, I think we also have to give kids credit a little bit. Oftentimes they're a lot more resilient than us as adults. And so I really think that, it'll go well. I know that there'll be hiccups. There always is. And this is a pandemic and nobody's has a perfect answer. We're following guidance. We're following our, thankfully, very, very low numbers in this region. We're following what the governor and the State Department of Ed has told us to do. And I think that as a community, we can all work together to do, in the safest way possible. And again, I do have to thank Dr. Baird for all of his work on this. I feel that he really has put in every safety measure. And I want to thank the board as well, because the board and the reentry team, they all worked very hard on this, the teachers, the administrators, but the reentry team, Dr. Baird, and, we really looked at every single safety measure. How would it work? And we need to get it in there to do what's best for our kids in Hebron. So, but I would put, just that caveat out there that parents, caregivers, families can work with us on the mask piece. That would be great.
And I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to be optimistic that we're going to be feeling really great at the end of that first week, and things went smoothly and kids are doing a great job with their masks and the cohort model is working. If I had to guess, I think that we're going to be tinkering with arrival dismissal after we see how it works the first day, or we may see more carpooling with, we know that people are doing some potting, it's sort of referred to in terms of before and after care, keeping, a close sort of social network And so, we may see that, we took out siblings, thinking siblings would be in the same car, and that's how we got to the 120 number. There's no better way to get an estimate at this point, but until we do it, we won't know. And so we'll have to see how that first week goes.
I have one more. Oh, go ahead. I'll ask mine later.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I'm glad that this is still a fluid document, that you're keeping your options open. I again implore you, and I understand that, really this is the Board of Education's responsibility, but I beg of you to keep the town manager informed of either progress or regress. We've been wondering what's happening with this plan, for literally a long time, and it was nice to actually get some sort of feedback and some sort of an idea of what the plan was. But we are still, the elected leaders of the town, and it is so critical that we work on this together. I'm trying to make sure we don't end up in a vacuum where, quite literally, we need to have the sharing of thoughts and ideas and or progress. So I ask you, please, keep the town apprised of things that are happening.
Absolutely.
Kind of just a question. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
Dr. Baird, you're certainly going to be scrutinized over the next few weeks, and I empathize with you for the pressure you're going to be under. And, I think we all have faith in you that you're going to do the best you can. But just as I stated earlier, do you really think that all the parents' views and concerns have been equally valued? Because it seems like there was more of a rush to get back to a full opening than being a little cautious and taking the time to assess reality, because reality has a way of upending even the best of plans. So I still kind of need to ask, what are the disadvantages of taking a little more time to assess, regroup, check the mental health of your staff, your students, seeing if new things have to be implemented? I just have trouble, and others have trouble, seeing what the disadvantage of opening fast is, or waiting too long is.
So if I could take this for one moment, and then Dr. Baird, you can. I think, where there has been many new studies that have come out, doctors that have come out that actually said that hybrid is the worst plan and most dangerous plan. I don't think any of us really know what the best thing to do is. We're doing the best we can. We are following all the guidelines. Actually, we are above and beyond all the guidelines that the state has set out. And we have all of our safety measures in place. And so I think that we gave, I will speak for myself right now. We gave the school district a week because we understand the traffic patterns and the, figuring out traffic arrival and dismissal and the mask wearing. But, to think that even in 3 weeks, that there aren't going to be times when we're working with children on wearing their mask, or, they forget, it's 3 months down the road, hopefully, and, hopefully they're still in school in 3 months, and they forget, they're just used to being together again with their friends, and they're crossing hallway markings. It's an ongoing thing that it's going to, have the administration, the teachers are going to have to work with kids just like they do anything else. But that's what I would say to that. I don't know, Tom, if you want to add anything.
That's good. I think that there's strong will to get kids back in school, and I think that we share that. And the board was confident in the team being able to get everything running smoothly in a week. And again, we're cautiously optimistic that we will absolutely be able to do that.
So it seems like I know there was a lot of parents that wanted the 3 weeks, and there was some question as whether you had the authority to overrule the board, and you handled that in your letter. But it seems like at least there can be some agreement at the end of the first week. You'll assess how the mask wearing is gone. You'll probably have data from other schools around the state as to incidents of COVID. And so we'll know a lot more at the end of the first week. And I get from what you said, it will be your decision as to whether to change course or not. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, ultimately, once school begins, I'm responsible for the kids in our care. And if I feel like that it's not safe to continue operating school, just like I would call a snow day or anything else like similar, if I feel the need to close school, I will certainly do that. Okay.
Well, I think that's a good method, or a good way to go. And I have confidence that you'll do what's necessary.
Thank you. And I know we talked a lot about, I just would like to make one more statement. We talked a lot about parents and wanting to keep the 3 weeks, but I will say that we heard equally, if not more so, to be honest, about parents that were concerned about us doing hybrid. No matter what we choose, hybrid for the first 3 to 5 weeks. I think, as board members, we all know that, when you're trying to make the best decision you can, the side that may not agree with you is who you hear from. But when we initially were trying to make the best decision possible, we heard a lot of community members that were upset that they wanted their kids in. They needed, they were worried about the economy, their jobs, things like that. So I think I feel the impact, that the decision has on families. No matter what decision it is, there's going to be an impact on families. And I think we can all appreciate that. And we know that as board members, we feel it. But I really feel our board cares about kids and safety. And I really feel like they are doing what they think is best. I should say, part of that board.
Gail, Peter, or Andy? I thank you very, very much. We look forward to updates, and we'll all pray that things go along flawlessly, and the next time we talk, it'll either be Halloween or Thanksgiving. Yeah, for a good time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Baird, and thank you to the board. I know you guys put a lot of time in there, and it's a difficult decision.
Okay. Donna? Okay, the update on the Hebron is over for business task force. Pete? Or Donna?
I'll start, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Okay.
The update on the task
we continue to move along. We've got some continued increase in Facebook activity down. I think we're getting close to 400.
We're in the high 380s. Yep. So we're almost there. Yeah.
That's going well. We've got good participation. We have over 20 businesses participating. We have a ton of gift cards, plenty to start doing the drawings. The next task for us is really on the Shops Local program is to push out more community involvement in terms of getting people to use the cards. So far, I think it's going very well. We're getting close to launching the next activity, scavenger hunt. So that's going very well. And so overall, I think we'll continue to update the board, but overall, things are going very well.
For businesses that want to join the business community, how do they go about doing that?
Well, I mean, we've contacted businesses multiple times. They can reach out to the town hall. They can reach out to Donna. There's access on our website. We're also following up again, with additional business, additional follow-ups, the members of the task force, they can contact any member of the task force. So we hope, Deanna, as we continue to, as this goes live and gets more and more activity, some of the businesses that we've reached out to a few times haven't responded for whatever reason. Hopefully, maybe they'll see that as an opportunity to join. And our objective is to have all of them join. So they can reach out in multiple ways through you'll have information on all of the website, Facebook, obviously individually, and the continued efforts of the town and the task force to reach out and communicate. We're sending another letter out shortly, so we'll continue to we'll keep asking until they either say no or join.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Donna, do you want to add anything?
No, I think you got it all. But the registration is very simple. They can do it, like Peter said, through just calling us. We can run the materials out to them. Or on our website, there's a sign-up form that is very, quick and easy. So we hope we get more businesses, and we would like to do our first drawing next week. So if people have cards that they've completed, drop them off at Town Hall so they can be included.
And the task force members have been going out, Dan, to the businesses themselves to try to do some face-to-face. And so we're putting on a full court press. So the objective now is to start giving away these gift cards that the businesses have provided to us through the funds provided through the town.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none. A regular meeting for September 3rd is on there. So anyone that has anything to add, make sure it gets into the town hall. Do we have any other consent agenda items for this meeting, or?
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask a question pertaining to the agenda going forward.
Yes.
Based on the information that was provided by the schools today, the superintendent and Chairwoman Pettit, are we looking to get any sort of regular updates? Or Andy, would you be covering that in future meetings? It seems like there was a lot of information and a lot of interest from the public and an interest for us to be sounding like from you, Mr. Chairman, to be a little bit more informed. Is that something that's going to stay on the agenda, or is that something, Andy?
It's on item 7, old business, town departments and school reentry reopening plan.
So does that stay on it, or is that just a week? Is that a meeting by meeting decision, or is that as old business? How long will that stay on there?
I mean, we can discuss it, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't see it going away at least until next year.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just curious if that's something that'll continue. I'm fine. Thank you.
It's such a moving target. Things that could happen or that haven't happened. I mean, I think it really is important that it stay on there. I'm really hoping that the school will do far more communication with Andy as the updates and all, so that he can keep us informed. As I say, it's really their area, but it does involve us, and there's at least a certain level of responsibility, I feel. Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
I would just make the suggestion, as long as we're, excuse me, as long as we're under that executive order, that we keep these items on the agenda. I think that makes perfect sense, and then we'll see what the governor's going to do when this first executive order runs out, if he's going to renew another one. So I think it should stay on the agenda for the Board of Selectmen, but that's up to you guys to decide.
Myself, I feel it would be foolhardy to take it off. I think it's just too important.
And I continue to be interested in the financial part of it, because at some point, the original estimate, which is clearly just a guess from some things that I had read, was on average it would be $1 million per school across the country to fund for the COVID-related reopening expenses. And so at some point, obviously that number, because we don't know, could continue to grow and have some some impact ultimately on the community. So yes, I agree. I'm interested in the finances as well. I mean, obviously, the board and the superintendent are doing a great job, and they're the experts in the area of the safety of the children. But in terms of understanding the impact on their town, I think it's important to keep getting that update as well, because that does seem to be a moving target.
Yep. I'm going to ask Andy to get back on, and what I'm going to ask him is to kind of go through what more than likely the basic process would be, where we get auditors and all that type of thing involved. So in other words, how a town budgets and what entities might come back or whatever.
Well, Peter raises a good point. Excuse me. I seem to have a frog. Peter raises a good point, and I'm sure you guys are aware that we're already on that. So Elaine and I worked on that today. The auditors are in town most of the week. Danny and Dave Vesey did get a request from the Board of Ed, so the Board of Finance will be talking about that. Now that I know they're looking for, or the amount of additional police that we need to supply, I'm going to have to put some numbers together with that. I've been working on that with Officer Rivera. As I stated, Dan Greenwood is out, but I think we'll be able to come up with something. The unfortunate thing there is there's nothing budgeted for that. And without getting into too much of the matrix, we just can't hire a cop for an hour. They have minimum hourly quotas that you have to pay to bring them in. And the difference is we're going to need them in the morning and then now in the afternoon as well. So that's going to take some shifts away from town coverage. So we're going to work that out. We're going to be as cooperative as we can, try to give them as much as we can, but there's definitely going to be a financial impact on that. So we're going to work on all these numbers and bring them back to you and show you what that kind of looks like from what we know.
One other question I would have on that, Andy, is, these are part-time people. Are we going to be able to meet the requirements with current staff? Not everyone is going to be able to put a couple hours in the morning and then come back and put a couple hours in the afternoon. Are we going to have issues with that?
Well, we're working on it. One thing I have to say is we have great police officers that are willing to work with us. The emphasis on finding out sooner than later is a couple of them had things scheduled that they're willing to move around to make those first couple of weeks safe. Mark can contest to this. Mark's got SRO training coming up very quickly where he's going to be gone for a week. So there's other things. And then in that matrix, they're counting on our resident trooper to be available for those shifts as well. And we all know how that works with the resident trooper. So we're going to do the best we can. We're going to work with them. And I think we'll figure it out. Like the superintendent said, I think by the end of the first week, we should have a better idea on what that looks like and what we're going to need.
And Dan, as far as, kind of Andy being in the town, kind of being put on the spot for having to come up with funds for Hebron out, everything that happens in RAM comes out of their budget. So when we hire additional police officers to support me at RAM, it comes out of the RAM budget. It doesn't come out of the town budget. But with Hebron Elementary and Gilead, it comes out of our budget.
Yeah, but maybe coming out of RAM's budget, but at the same time, RAM's budget is comprised from the three towns. So there is
but
still...
at least it's not a surprise to us, like Andy was saying. That Andy said we didn't budget for this, but RAM has some contingency money that is available that we've already allocated and we're using it for that. And also, we're paying 48% of it, but Andover and Marlboro is picking up their percentage of who's hired there too, including me.
Correct. But, it's still, at the end of the day, it's still money that has to get found out of the different entities' budgets. And eventually it goes back to the taxpayers, to find this money, to fund it. And it would be nice if we had an idea, just the types of dollars that we can actually realistically expect from the state. But again, it's the same thing. Where does that money come from? So it's.
Andy's been confronted with this before, and we've figured out we'll make it work. The guys are ready to step up to the plate and split their shifts and go help at the school, then go on patrol, then come back to the school. And we've done this before, right, Andy? So Andy knows we'll make it work.
Thank you. Okay. Where are we at? Again, I don't have a. There we are. So
any other old business, or if not, then item 7 is new business. 7A is draft agenda for September 3rd.
So again, as I say, if anybody has any other issues. Hearing none, we have, actually on our consent agenda, we have the August 13th, 2020 approval of minutes and the special meeting that we had and the tax refunds. Hearing no discussion, move the Hebron Board of Selectmen to approve the following consent agenda items and motions contained therein as if individually adopted. We have the approval of the minutes of August 13th, 2020, our special meeting that we had because of the storm the previous week, and then the tax refunds as listed there. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Going down the list, Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
Mark? You were muted, Mark.
Yep, Mark Rivera, aye. Dan.
Thank you. Gail? Gail, are you muted?
Not now. Gail Richmond, aye.
Okay, and John?
John Collins, aye.
And Dan Larson, aye. Okay, next item. We have our liaison reports. Mark?
So we'll start with the AHM. RAM and AHM are working together to create additional childcare services, particularly for the teachers at RAM who are having issues with kids being in a hybrid system somewhere else. And I didn't think of this, but maybe Hebron doesn't really have to worry about it now because they're back full time only for a week, and we're definitely totally committed to the hybrid system. Want me to do RAM at the same time, Dan, or wait?
Sure, please.
So RAM, we've had our task force about coming back to school. We've met almost twice a week. I've spoken with Mr. Leslie 3-4 times a week, and we're excited about our hybrid. It was a unanimous vote to go to the hybrid at school. I know as a parent, if we were going back full time, I wasn't sending my kid. So a lot of people felt that way. And so we are going back with the hybrid. Half of the kids will be in school Monday and Tuesday. We're totally off on Wednesday. And the other half of the kids will be in the school Thursday and Friday. Athletics has been an issue for a while, but it seems like now most activities are being canceled, particularly football. They're still working on cross country and any other extracurricular activities are going to be done remotely. So we're anticipating some problems with the new traffic pattern just because nobody knows what that's going to reveal. If you've seen in front of RAM, thanks to Andy's vigilance, it's been changed, and we're hoping it's going to be better. And hopefully, I think Andy said it'll be ready to go by the time school starts. So we need some additional help up there too. And maybe it's not going to be that bad, and we won't need 2 or 3 cops up there, and I can handle it on my own. So that's basically the status of RAM and AHM.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Gail?
There we go. Hebron Board of Ed, you heard from them earlier, so that's that. The Douglas Library Board of Trustees next meeting will be a Zoom meeting. It's next Monday. And the Commission on Aging Senior Center, their next scheduled meeting is on September 2nd. That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Peter?
Nothing new on the Board of Finance. The Parks and Rec Commission had a special meeting. They met for a few hours. A lot of their discussion really triggered around staffing and finance. I know Andy's been mentioning it in his update regarding Rich's plans, and so they spent a lot of time talking about bringing the rec supervisor back and how they'll transition with the position that Rich fills pending his retirement. And I guess more to follow on that, but the underlying theme is there might be some need for some additional funds, and obviously as based on the lack of revenue that's come in. So that's going to be a continuing issue that I'm sure we'll hear about either through an update through Andy or through finance. So more to follow on that, but some continued challenges for the Parks and Rec Commission as they transition. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Economic development met on Monday, and the main topic was the what I talked about, an elevator presentation that is being developed. The idea behind it is to have, like in startups, when you're going out for funding, you have an elevator pitch, which is basically, it's supposed to be the time that you would have in an elevator going from up to down if you had somebody that could fund you. So it's quick. So it's generally a 12 to 15 flip chart of the best parts of your project. In our case, our project is Hebron. And so the first drafts come out, they've reviewed it, and I guess we'll be coming back with a next draft in the next meeting. So all good.
Perfect. Andy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly, we had a tailgate progress review meeting with RAM, and as Mark stated, it's ahead of schedule and it's still within budget. So it looks like we're going to, a lot of work was done in August, so we're going to continue to wrap that up. It's supposed to finish in mid-September. We're very happy with the contractor and the work that was done. It was built to the design and monitored by the engineer, so everything seems to have gone in place. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that it finishes as well as it is right now. Next meeting's within 2 weeks. And then I know WPCA is going to be meeting with Lebanon, and I know it was always a standing joke that the meter was still broke, but now that the meter's fixed, they don't like what the meter's reading, so they want to come up with a different matrix on how to gauge how much of that flow is going through Hebron to come up with a rate. So they're going to meet next week. So hopefully that goes well. And that's all I had.
Thank you. With me, it's the Rosie the Riveter, which you've already discussed. And other than that, I have nothing new on my end. So again, opening it back up for public comment. It looks like we may have 2 people. Donna? Donna, do we have 2 people for public comment?
At this time, if there's anybody for public comment, please let us know.
I guess Keith Pettit, I don't know if Donna wasn't able to introduce her or to say who was coming on, but she did say okay to me. Keith Pettit, 92 Old Colchester Road. I'd like to start off by thanking the Board of Selectmen for, everything that they've done for the town. And I know we've gone through some really tough things in 2020, just recovering from a storm and now getting ready to go into a school year. And it's kind of fitting that we are just recovering from a storm, because I know Selectman Rivera had pointed out some of the challenges of having extra traffic coming into the schools. And as a parent who will be sending my daughter back driving, dropping off and picking up, that's a very large concern to me, because when you're tripling traffic, as Selectman Rivera had said, kind of everybody thinks that they should go first and they know how to do things. And as we saw with the storm, there was a lot of people ignoring stop signs and outed traffic lights. You wonder how many people need to go back for a refresher course. And unfortunately, we're talking about shoving 120 cars into, what we all know is a very small space in each school. And again, Selectman Rivera, I'm sure, is very familiar with what could possibly happen. And at RAM, the tragedy that we had there, I would be devastated if that happened, at one of the elementary schools. And I just would like to, really emphasize the point that I think the parents need to be aware that they need to be a little bit more cautious, that they need to be a little bit more forgiving when they're dropping off and picking up. I appreciate any police support or any other traffic control support that the town can afford. And of course, Selectman Rivera's efforts to coordinate that is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much, all of you, for your time and your effort. I know a lot of times it goes unpraised. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment? I see what looks like two people. That's why I'm. Caller number 2.
Danny, I don't know if you can hear me now, but that was just me acknowledging Keith. So there's no other comment at this time.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. Well, without further ado, whose mission is it?
My favorite thing to do, Dan? That used to be Clara's job. I got it now. 8:28. For us to adjourn. I make that motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
All in favor.
Everybody wants to stay. I love it. Good night, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye, guys.